Hi everybody, and welcome back to MIPCube. I'm Louisa Heinrich, and I will be your moderator this afternoon for the rules of engagement. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I've spent the last 17 years working in digital, trying to make connections between people and the things that they need and love and want, content, products, services. And in that time, in case you hadn't noticed, everything has changed. Thanks to digital, the way we live our lives has changed. The way we bank, the way we travel, the way we communicate with one another, and most relevantly to this crowd, the way that we make, discover, consume, and monetize content. That used to be fairly straightforward. You made a thing, you marketed it, you monetized it. It was linear. And when digital began, it was a distribution channel. It was part of the distribution network. That isn't the case anymore. We already see digital starting to creep into linear programming. We see social media engagement becoming a part of television programs. More importantly, we have an entire generation of audiences who very rarely tune into television at all. They get their content, discover it, consume it, discuss it, dissect it, all in the digital domain. And that can be really daunting for traditional content makers and really exciting for potential newcomers to the market. In theory, anyone these days can be anything: content creator, superstar, producer, distributor, etc. The reality is it's a bit more difficult than that. The good news is that people will still pay for what makes them happy. They'll still pay for what they love. They may not pay in dollars or cents anymore. Now, a lot of times they pay in attention. So this needs to be our focal point, as most of us have already figured out. Engagement and attention, and holding that engagement and sustaining that attention, are the keys to the way forward in the digital domain and in the digital era. Today, we have three men with us who have cracked the puzzle, I think, so we're going to get to learn from them. We'll be in conversation with Hindle from FremantleMedia and Reza Izad from Collective Digital Studios. Thank you. But first up, we have Gregory Dorcel to give a talk from MARC Dorcel. Bienvenue.
Hello. Today we'll speak about sex and a little about business. So, relax, 91% of French adults have already watched a porn movie. 43% of French adults watch regularly, it's to say several times a year. And much more surprising, 18% of French adult women watch today porn alone, and at least one time a month. So sorry guys, it's not only a consummation with their boyfriend. And moreover, to show how it's became massive, 36% of internet downloads now are done on pornography. So porn concerns everybody, except you, of course, I know. So we'll try to make you understand a little bit more about this strange business. And first, to introduce the company, I will give you some figures. The company was born in '79. So this year it's our 35th anniversary. We are and our contents are broadcasted in 56 countries. We do. It's a small company. It's a small independent group. We do an average of 30 million euro sales per year. We produce about 100 programs. We have an 800 catalog programs. More interesting, we manage 3 paid TV channels, and 60% of our sales are made today through VOD. So we are fully digital, when 7 years ago, 80% of our sales was done through DVD. We are also involved on home video, web, mobile, press, licensing activities. So we are really multimedia. Why we are here? It's also because our company, mostly in France, is well known to be very innovative. The company was built in '79. with the beginning of the VHS, the home video. Then we turned to in 95 with CD-ROM, DVD. We released the first multilingual DVD in Europe. It was in 98. And then we came to VOD quite early in 2001. Just to remind you, YouTube began in 2005. Then we went to crowdfunding in 2010, a new experience for us. And as soon as 2009, we were ready with 3D. And now we are focusing on platform like kind of Netflix one with unlimited access through SVOD. Today, our second characteristic is brand awareness. In spite of the nature of our activity, which is special, of course, Dorcel is one of the top 100 brands, the most well-known in France. So we have 50% of spontaneous awareness on French adults. Moreover, even so if our activity is focusing on adults, we benefit of a very high media coverage on an international level. And we are also very efficient on social networks. So the specificity we have is that we are only committed to premium content and the content that you can buy and you pay for. Of course, the nature of our content do not allow us to be free to air, and we don't want. So please have in mind that it's only a payable content. As a consequence, our challenge become today how to create brand awareness and make our content very attractive to be buyable and to be booked. But we do that without advertising. You will not see anywhere advertising on any adult activities. We do not have access to YouTube officially, nor to mainstream platforms as iPhone solution, iTunes, and so on. And moreover, we have to be able to monetize and to sell our content when 95% of the consumption is done free on the web with a huge piracy and moreover in our activity. So the question for us and today is what is our strategy in this context? First, the first issue for us is to engage the audience in the brand. So how do? We generate buzz. So instead of doing advertising in Europe mostly, and mostly in France, of course, everybody knows us because of the buzz we create each year. We try also to be accessible the best we can. So we facilitate contacts by being on all media, any network, but moreover, of course, by being as acceptable as possible and easy for the audience to assume, which is a big challenge for us. Moreover, we try to be, as any other media, to be close to our audience. We are dedicated to our customer. Just to give you an idea, we do not have any marketing department in the company because we force each manager, each service manager to be directly in touch with the audience and to be directly accessible. As an example, all the social network activity we have are not from community manager. They are directly from manager of each service. Moreover, it helps us to create a unique relationship. So no mass communication, only a particular message. We try to be part of the life, of course, part of the intimacy of our audience. And moreover, we are pushed to respect our consumer a lot and to be as generous as possible with them, because we expect our customer to finance us. One time again, our content is only payable, buyable, so everything is coming from our customer. So we give them a lot. I will give you one example to show you how we try to engage the audience in the brand recognition. For the last qualification game for the World Cup, France was in a very bad position, and everybody was expect France to be defeated. And our VOD director tweeted, "If the French football team is qualified tonight, my VOD will be free all night long to celebrate." One time again, we went directly from the manager of the service directly to the end consumer. Immediately, we have seen that something special was coming. It was the second info most retweeted this night in France, better than any goal. 300,000 people was reached immediately and retweet and received the tweets. And finally, nothing to do with us, France won the game. What happened? We just had time to prepare a backup solution to collect mails, etc., to send free access after the collapse, because in 45 seconds after the match, all our servers went down. Traffic was multiplied by 25, and in 3 hours, we get 35,000 registration to get free content. Of course, the second consequence was an international press coverage of the operation, who helped us to reach, with this coverage, something as 12 million targets. So, one time again, it was a very good buzz, but to be honest, sale generated was equal to quite zero, something like that. It helped us for recognition, to build the image of the company, but in terms of turnover, nothing. So, how do we do for this? To help sales, to help people to buy our content. We try to engage the audience in the content to make it participating as much as possible. So first, we target the consumer. Audience for us, it's not the consumer. One time again, 95% of the consummation is done, for our kind of program, is done free on the web. So we have a huge and massive audience, but consumer, people who buy, it's much less. So the buyers are a niche, and we take care a lot of this niche. Moreover, we try to involve our public in a real experience, to say exclusive with high value. Of course, we try to bring emotion, and with this, we create community. We push codes to be shared. We try to create icons with actress, with the founder of the company, and we try to create a myth around the company. Moreover, we interact with the consumer 3 ways. Us to them, we told them a lot. Them to us, we try to be as accessible as possible, and we push them to communicate with us. And then after that, them to them, we push them to share. For this, we bring you today another example, which was a crowdfunding platform called mydorcel.com. So, yeah, crowdfunding. It was in France, we had the first operation crowdfunding in the music industry. A company called My Major Music launched first experience which was very famous in France with a singer called Gregory. To give you an idea, they collect 70,000 euros in 5 months. So numbers are not big, but it's just to give you an idea. 50,000 euros in 5 months for a very famous singer. When we have launched our operation, we have collected 125,000 euros in 78 hours. So, well, it was a little bit different. First, because we made fun of ourselves. The gimmick was become yourself a porn producer. We push the backers not only to invest in a movie, not only to co-produce, but also to participate to all the creation of the content. We push them to vote. We show them completely transparently all the process to manufacture the content. They get access to everything. They vote for the script, they vote for the casting, for the location, and they were involved everywhere in the production. So we succeed to create a huge involvement of a community for our content and for a particular content. At the end, after this experience, what's coming also, which was very interesting, is that all this community protects themselves, the content from piracy, and they did also the promotion, because of course they were very involved on that. So they were a community of 1,000 co-producers, happy because they get 30% profit on the operation. And this operation is still a reference in France, because most of the time on crowdfunding, people just ask to their backers to pay for, to invest, but not to involve them directly in the production. Voilà. Thanks a lot. Just a small news. As we do our 35th anniversary this year, we have a party tomorrow night at Club Les Marches, and you can come and meet Adeline if you want any invitation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Gregory, for the talk. Let's meet our other two guests. Keith, would you like to talk first or roll your video first?
Sure. But just before I do, I just want to check. Is this on? Yeah? I just want to check. How many people do use porn regularly? If you could put your hands up. I just want to... I think, Gregory, I think your stats might be wrong. That's strange.
Shocking that people don't want to admit it. Shocking.
I'm Keith Hindle from FremantleMedia. I oversee our digital activities and our work with advertisers around the world. Fremantle is, most years, the largest television production company in the world. We make about 10,000 hours of new television every year. We have about 300 series on television right now around the world. Two big activities for us in the digital world are relevant for this conversation. One is that we spend a lot of time extending that content, TV content, interactively, so you can interact with our shows in a great number of ways. We're constantly looking at the cutting-edge ways of doing that. And second is how we take that content and put it online and monetize it as well as we can, and we'll talk about that a bit more today. And also make new, purely digital native content. And which has been a big focus for us over the last 2 or 3 years.
Thanks for that, Keith. Reza, would you like to...
Sure. I run a company called Collective Digital Studio. It's a multi-channel network on YouTube. We're most known for managing some of the top content creators on the platform, like Freddie W, The Annoying Orange, the UKF channels. And we've sort of made a name for us in terms of accelerating the production that goes around these channels and building longer form content and taking the content to television. We also have a very large ad-driven business. And what's interesting, because I know this is a conversation around engagement, we're seeing a lot of broadcasters and brands actually becoming more aggressive publishers, and we're working with a number of them to help them accelerate that engagement as it relates to YouTube and digital video. So that's
Okay, thanks. I'm going to start with a question for you, Reza. Actually, it's for all of you, but as I know your background, well, Keith comes from content, or Fremantle comes from content,
Yes.
and Marc Dorcel obviously comes from content. Your background came from engagement.
Yes. Yeah, we were a talent management firm. So the series of our business was we had a very large music business. We managed Linkin Park, Enrique Iglesias, and a number of other large, multinational and well-known acts. We started marketing them digitally. That was a big sort of advantage that we had in the marketplace that allowed us to grow our management business. And from there, we got into business with a kid named Lucas Cruikshank, who'd created the Fred channel, which at the time was the largest channel on YouTube. And we started to play around with content with him. We did a interactive, music album. It was a Christmas record. We thought he spoke in a high-pitched voice, so we thought it would mirror the Chipmunks. And we did quite well. We sold 100,000 downloads, and this is in 2009 off of iTunes, around a 4-song EP we put together. And then we partnered with Brian Robbins and financed what became the Fred movies, which we ultimately licensed to Nickelodeon, which were in 2010, 11, and 12 their highest rated programs. And so that was sort of the beginning of how we got into the space. And we sort of organically started to build the infrastructure, not just around representation, but really around all the things you need to do to be effective as a producer and distributor on YouTube and in digital video.
So I'll ask you the question, which is, what is the secret to engagement? How do you do it? That's what everybody wants to know.
Well, I don't think it's a mystery, right? It's about doing a thing repetitively and doing it over and over and over again towards an audience and figuring out what works for your audience and what doesn't work and continuing to deliver that. And it's, when we look at our multi-channel network, it's very disaggregated, but when we look at it from a programming schedule, which every broadcaster understands, it starts to look very much the same, where we have shows that for instance, we have Good Mythical Morning. It comes out every day of the week on the Rhett and Link channel, and so the audience has grown accustomed to seeing that. The Annoying Orange, episodes are coming out twice a week, and they have their sort of cadence, and we market against that. So we leverage the social, and obviously we leverage all the tools that YouTube delivers you to sort of capture a new subscriber and another view, hopefully.
It sounds like a lot of overhead.
You can do it fairly efficiently. You can if you're smart. But yes, there's a lot of overhead that goes into managing these things.
You know what I'm trying to make you say, right?
Well,
well, when we disclosure, we had a conversation prior to this very moment, actually with all of the guys, and we were talking about what it takes to actually get an audience fully engaged, and the fact that it does take effort, it does take engagement, it does take commitment from the whole organization. And Gregory has told me that they don't even have a marketing department per se that goes out onto social media. It's the people who run the departments, who run the content producing divisions and the video on demand divisions. And Reza told me it takes up to 2 years to build a properly engaged audience.
Correct, it takes time. So it's just a function of time. It depends on where you're coming from, though. So if you're a broadcaster, you have a lot of leverage. You have your media that you can use to drive people to activity. So it depends on where in the world you're coming from. So for us to organically build a channel, we're looking at a timeline where we don't have the levers of big broadcast media. It takes several years to get it really ramped up and going. So when you look at The Annoying Orange, it's 3.5 years in, he's now crossing his second billionth view. So that's really what goes into it. So it's definitely.
Keith, one for you. Well, these are all for all of you, so feel free to jump in. But so FremantleMedia began by creating formats for linear television, and now you've moved on, sort of evolved. Now you're doing digitally native productions as well. Can you talk a little bit about the drivers behind that and what's changed in the way that the company's thought about digital content?
Sure. TV is still our core business and will be for quite some time, but every year it gets harder to launch a successful TV show that attracts a younger demographic. So that 18 to 34 viewer, even with a very successful TV show, is often not in that audience. So we have to find them elsewhere. So looking to digital content is crucial. So our big focus on digital native content is discovering new IP, and we think we can create some ourselves, we hope, but more importantly, I think working with some of these YouTube stars that have emerged and some of the talented amateur content creators who've managed to amass extraordinary audiences is a big development focus for us. So looking at those guys and girls, seeing how we can elevate their content quality, bring some of our storytelling and production capability to it, and hopefully create new IP. That's our goal.
All right. So another question is, how do you know what to make? I want to actually start with Gregory on this one. When we talked prior to the session, you were talking about how you listen to your audience and engage with them, but they're not the decision makers in what gets made. So how much of it comes from them, how much of it comes from you?
For us, they are in fact the decision maker because they pay everything. So it's very simple. When I sell, but they decide each day. Same as for the audience on a TV show. Finally, your end consumer decide each day. So of course we have to create fantasy, magic, something a little magic. So it have to come from someone else. But they are very involved in the content anyway. The only question for us is, are we able to understand each day what they expect? Are we able to understand why this content is not successful, why this one is not successful? So of course, it's the most difficult is to read and to understand this. But whatever the way is, if they vote, if they participate, at the end of the day, they can buy or they can just watch free-to-air your content. They decide about what they will see tomorrow.
And just to add that one huge advantage for digital content is you can test things out, obviously. So we don't have that luxury on television. In fact, we'll at times produce an entire series that could be cancelled in episode 2 if you're in America, as I am. So that's not an enviable position to be in, certainly for the distribution networks involved. Online, you can test out different things, and I think leading companies in this space, like CDS, like Defy, like Vice, will test out content, look at the audience reaction, and then build from there.
Yeah, I mean, our business is built around identifying channels that already have large distribution. And so for us to take a risk, we mitigate our risk significantly just because we know the audience will get, the content will reach the audience.
So basically you're observing what's happening. You're watching what your audiences are already doing and trying to come in and bring value to that exchange.
Correct.
To put it all in very jargony terms. All right, so to the table, why is Vice so hugely successful?
I think because they have an incredibly clear voice and they stick to it. I think it's one of the big reasons. They're also an army of young, hungry, very smart people. So we've just announced a deal with Vice. We're launching a joint venture digital food network with Vice. They're extraordinary to work with. They really are very, very true to themselves. And when we're developing content concepts with them, it really has to be on message and it really has to be authentic. And that runs through everything they do. In television, often we can bring production elements, game elements, play with the story. In Vice want to have a real reflection of some part of human life, and they never deviate from that. But so that's all something you'll be familiar with. They also have an extremely strong ad sales team, of which there are very few digital companies that do. I'm sitting next to one that does. But very few do, and they've built that out very successfully. I think one other thing that they've done that's probably one of the most advanced in digital content is built a very strong off-YouTube presence. And I think this is one of the most important things in digital companies now. YouTube is incredibly important to everyone. It's just an extraordinary way to have your content discovered and shared. But real monetization, significant monetization, can come a lot faster on your owned and operated digital destinations. And they've done a very good job at using their own ad sales team to primarily drive their advertiser activity on their owned and operated sites, which is the way that they can then fund content effectively.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at Vice, what stands out is they've built an incredible consumer brand, right? And a consumer brand that the advertiser understands, so a B2B brand as well as the consumer side. And I think there's a huge premium that is paid by advertisers to engage in the clarity of the brand that they've built. And I think when we look at you know the challenges we face with advertisers, a lot of time it's lack of familiarity with the content. And so, you know, that's building a brand is going to be critical for anyone who's going to succeed in this space. That's the big takeaway from Vice.
I loved the story also that you told about the meeting that you were in, where you said, well, how long were you thinking about for that segment?
Yeah, just one of the early questions I asked Vice when we started working with them was well, what's your typical episode length? What do you find works? And they looked at me very strangely and said, we just keep filming until we've told the story. So that's not a luxury that we have in television, but they have lengths of clips that will be anything from 4 minutes to 50 minutes. I think their average watch time now is something like 27 minutes on YouTube. That's extraordinary length, becoming very, very close to television content. So we can take some of that content and package it for TV, which we'll be doing, but these are standalone, long viewership, long viewed content in its own right.
So I've started to hear what I said earlier in my intro about, anyone can do this now. Anyone can launch a network. Anyone can be a content creator. Anyone can do this. True or false? And if false, then why false?
I doubt if Reza would say it was easy, right, or quick. The companies that we've looked at and work with have all been at it for years and had many false starts, and it's taken them a while to get there. The barriers to content creation and consumption have collapsed over the last few years, as we all know. YouTube stars have arisen in their own bedrooms to extraordinary levels of viewership, but still they then have found the need to have a machinery around them. So many of them have joined multi-channel networks that you will have heard of emerging across YouTube to bring them a whole suite of services that they really can't deliver on their own. To make sure everybody's aware that the services that a multi-channel network delivers to an amateur content creator online are optimization. They flick all the right switches on YouTube to make sure they're being viewed and monetized as well as they can. They bring a sense of community. They bring them to be partners with, to know other similar like-minded content creators. And occasionally they'll bring in some funding and some higher value advertising deals. And the high-quality work that CDS have done is just a perfect example of that. But to be honest, the thing that they get most of all is when they get a call from an MCN, is they go and they're asked to join a network. They say, what, me? Jenny? A network? Really? And it's that sense of belonging is the thing that really, really seems to matter to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone can come in a world where you can go direct to an audience and build an audience. I think, speaking to what Keith was saying, infrastructure and turning that into a business, that's going to get more and more challenging, over time. Just because you need a big sales force, you need a lot of technology, you need a number of things in order to make the business really work.
Do you guys think that we are seeing the possibility of a democratization of infrastructure, of distribution, in a way that we haven't in the past? I mean, distribution traditionally is owned by the majors, is owned by the broadcasters who have a channel on the television that you click to.
It depends on what kind of content you're creating. So we have a show called Video Game High School, which is made for the web. It's partially crowdfunded, partially paid for by sponsors. We're in our 3rd season of it, but the reality is where our revenues are coming from, or what makes that production sustainable, are our licenses with companies like Netflix, We now have 18 episodes, 18 half hours that we're going to take to the broadcast market. That's where the profitability is in creating that content at the moment. And so there will be we still are going to have to deal with, I guess, a version of those gatekeepers. They may be different, and they may be in slightly different businesses, but our licensing of our content is increasingly becoming a bigger part of what we have to do to produce content at a higher level. I think that's really, so it depends on where you want to play in the value chain and what kind of content you want to create.
So let's stop skirting around the issue. A lot of people say there's no money in online, there's no money in digital. Beg to differ?
Very much so. So for instance, if you look at just consumption habits and you say, first you need the audience, and where advertisers, the next thing to follow is advertisers. And so definitely in the US, and I would assume globally, we're seeing a huge trend of especially younger consumers, consuming content in a very, very different way. And so we're sort of in the first phases of the business organizing itself. So in the US, it's all around rating point or rating point equivalents. And I think YouTube just announced that they were going to go into that VCE and OCR sort of platform. So we're in the beginnings of the business sort of getting organized. And as it does, more and more brands are going to flow in, and I think we'll all sort of see the rising ship. So it's just a function of time. So today, I think relative to audience and mind share, it doesn't monetize as well. But over time, it's going to gradually start eating and eroding into what is broadcaster share, print share, all the other medium. And I think that's sort of a trend we're going to see over the next 5-6 years. So.
And I would just say, for us, we have a great deal of viewership on YouTube, about 7 billion views in 2013. Lots of that TV content works very well in short form. That's very highly profitable for us. It would be on this, we don't share the numbers, but it would be on the scale of a major broadcast partner for us around the world, purely from YouTube. The advertiser demand to be associated with higher quality content on YouTube is very, very clear. And YouTube are changing their model somewhat, where the higher quality content is going to benefit more from those higher value advertising dollars, at least where that content is both high quality and delivers high engagement, to your point. So engagement is becoming more and more of a critical metric. We've seen sort of the early years where views were the thing everybody was chasing, then it became subscriber growth rate was a big focus. Watch time is still a very, very important part, indicator for YouTube and for us. But engagement is now the key thing. So how many people are commenting? How many people have a positive sentiment? What is the proportion, the percentage of comments to views? How many people who've viewed a clip make a comment? Key engagement metrics that are beginning to have a direct impact on how many and the value of ads served against your viewership.
And Gregory, you said that your sales went from 80% hard media 6 years ago to 60% online now.
Yes, it was 7 years ago, and now 60% of our sales are coming from VOD. VOD through the web, IPTV, DSL, cable system, yeah.
And do you expect that trend to continue?
Yes, it should grow. We have to say that it seems that all over the world this year, we think that it's because of piracy, mostly in France and in Europe, they were slow on the VOD, but obviously should be something which increase. And what we are expecting at Dorcel, we expect the theater movie to be accessible on VOD 2 weeks after theater. We do not understand in this world, with the generation we try to catch and we try to convince, they get access by piracy immediate to any movie immediately when it's released on theater. So we do not understand how the audiovisual industry could ask them again to wait 5 months, 4 months or whatever to be able to pay for this content. So we think that when the market will succeed to face and to turn this problem, the VOD consumption should increase a lot.
So that's a really good point that you've just brought up, this idea of access and how and when we make content available. And one question that I wanted to ask all of you guys, particularly you two in the middle here, is there are a lot of brands out there, a lot of massive content brands, a lot of broadcasters, and a lot of individual series that are not yet doing much in digital, that are not yet making the most of their property in a digital sense. Is it too late for them to start, or are they basically screwed, or is it just a matter of getting their act together and going for it?
Certainly not too late. I think a lot of brands, there's two different things here. One is digital engagement and social media connection with their consumers, and the other is video content, which is often the next step. I think most brands, there's very few major brands now who don't have a very strong social media policy. Some of those have the braveness and the boldness to move into video-based content as well, which can be more of a challenge, a creative challenge and a cost challenge at times, but many are, and it's interesting to see them do it. I think a really important thing to do is to try and put yourself in the mind of the advertiser, who doesn't just think about whatever platform it might be that you work on. If you're a TV company, or if you're an online company, or if you're an app manufacturer, all of those things are in the suite of a marketing campaign for a major advertiser. And so you have to talk to them about all of those elements. And the sophisticated digital companies, again, like CDS and like Vice, have a very strong social media reach around the video content they make, all the things that the major advertisers are looking for. So you see a huge amount in social media now of branded activity. I think an increasing proportion of those will move into video content online.
Yeah, I mean, here's a phrase I often use in my office. So Eminem, who's a big global star, he's big in every media. He'll be big online, he'll be big on Facebook, he'll be big on radio, he'll be big everywhere. And I think that's the reality of this. The question is, are you doing it right? Are you approaching it? It is a little different than broadcast, so I don't know that I would stick an entire show up in the same way, especially if you're leveraging the YouTube audience. So you may want to approach it a little differently, but fundamentally, big brands are going to cut through all the noise. I mean, we just used Vice as an example of a brand that has come from digital and is moving sort of up the value chain. But coming from the top of the value chain, coming into digital, I don't see there being anyone sort of too late for anything at the moment. It may be over time. I think the big challenge is if you look at PewDiePie, who's getting into the tens of millions of subscribers. It may be hard to catch people like that, just given that they have such an advanced lead on everybody. But fundamentally, I don't think it's too late for anybody. I mean, it is direct to consumer, right? So it's actually just changing your mind frame, and the consumer is the one who's going to ultimately vote.
I think that's a pretty big shift for a lot of people.
Correct.
Gregory, anything to add?
To ask them, yeah, I have a question about the business of free content that you represent. Is it a challenge for you to deliver free content to YouTube or such platform, in the other end to sell it to TV station?
Yes. So we have those discussions with our broadcast partners around the world all the time. The interesting change over the last couple of years has been that broadcasters have realized the power of YouTube in most markets, not all, but in most, and so we're very keen to engage with it. But of course, YouTube isn't just free. Google have 12,000 ad salespeople around the world who are selling advertising against that content. It tends to be the lower end of the CPM scale, and successful ad sales teams can bring in high value. But there's a lot of ad activity that's going on through YouTube themselves that is delivered to content providers.
We've seen a big move of broadcasters actually very interested in this audience because it is younger than their average demos, and so they're really responsive to the content. It's not usually the same. So Fred is a vlog, and it's a kid telling a story about a character that he's inhabiting. We didn't sell that to Nickelodeon. What we sold to Nickelodeon was a 2-hour formatted, scripted, well-produced piece of content. So there's a lot of IP coming in here that we're then licensing. We had a similar thing. We have a channel called The Annoying Orange, which we licensed to Cartoon Network. We created those were 11-minute format. We continued to produce the content on the web, So those were the short form pieces, and we licensed them very, very different product. And the two worked very, very well in terms of promoting the show, promoting TuneIn, and we saw a very nice lift from broadcast and things like that. So it worked very, very symbiotically.
And if I can just jump in, it's interesting the surprise benefits that we get. So many of you will have seen the Susan Boyle clip that went viral a few years ago, 5 years ago or so. She was a Scottish older lady on Britain's Got Talent who everybody comes on stage, everybody expects her to be a poor singer, and she's obviously magnificent. That clip went around the world in days. We had 300 million views in just a few weeks. It's got up to 1 billion over time. That clip from Britain's Got Talent helped us sell the television show Got Talent into lots of other markets around the world. So I think 44 countries now have their own version of the Got Talent brand. Britain's Got Talent, America's Got Talent, lots of other countries. It's actually now the biggest format in the world. We just got a plaque from the Guinness Book of Records for it. Many of those sales were done on the back of people seeing the Susan Boyle clip, broadcasters seeing the Susan Boyle clip on YouTube and going, oh God, you're right, that's the show Fremantle have been pitching me, I need it for my market. So that was a wake-up call for us.
You may have just answered this question, but I'm wondering what the most surprising lesson that digital has taught you. This is one for each of you, whoever wants to go first.
Mine would be we can't do it all on our own. So we're a big machine. We have lots of very, very talented people. We need expertise of people who are live in the digital content world purely to really do it well.
For us, it's proximity to audience. It's been I'm always dumbfounded sometimes when we're not honest and we're not good actors, or we force things, or we're not pure to whatever that piece of content was. And it sounds very abstract and flowery, which is not really my nature, but every time we get it wrong, we are told immediately that we got it wrong. And so it's being transparent and being very, very honest and clear about your intentions. So it's not bad to monetize, and it's not bad to do brand deals or sponsorship or any of that stuff, but if you do it in some kind of indirect or not clear way and somebody figures it out, you're gonna have lots of problems that you didn't expect. And that's been the biggest learning lesson, is not to force the things that we would normally do in traditional media in terms of forcing the situation.
On that, well, further along that line, is it actually true that young audiences are fickle and indecisive and have no loyalty and aren't interested in long-term relationships with content networks, etc.?
I think all audiences, forget young, there's so much coming at us across the board. And I'll take the New York Times, for example. I used to be a subscriber, used to come to my door, I would read it religiously every morning. And the digital version, I still am a subscriber, but like the way I'm consuming it is radically different. My relationship with the paper is radically different. If I use Flipboard, it kind of comes in and out of my sphere, and I end up consuming my news. By the time I get to my subscription, it's usually old news already. And so, I think we're in a world where there's so much, fighting for attention that you have to be honest, you have to be distributed very broadly, and you have to stand for something. And I think that's the biggest challenge we all face.
And I think the holy grail is if you can accept that people are going to mature and change in their content choices as they move through life, and hand them off to the next appropriate piece of content for them. And I think DreamWorks' acquisition of Awesomeness, the young sort of teen-targeted multi-channel network in the US, is probably an example of that. They can get people very young, have a strong direct subscriber dialogue with them, and introduce them to other content as they age from the DreamWorks stable. Disney's acquisition of Maker recently may be a similar approach. And so I think that sort of walking through your life as a content partner is an interesting one. But one of the key things that we keep coming back to is that on television, every time we launch a TV show, we and our broadcast partners have to persuade you to tune into that channel at that particular time and watch it. Even when we start the next season of a super successful show, we still have to remind you to come. This is not the same on digital media, as probably most of this audience know, but many people don't realize. If you subscribe to something, if you follow something, That's a direct relationship. That means every time you go back to, let's say, YouTube, and you're logged in, as most young people are, you will immediately see the last post from that content provider that you've subscribed to. You don't have to go to it again. It comes to you. And that has incredibly important implications for the ability of the platform to launch new IP. So that's a key driver for us.
One more question from me, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So, question time, people. Gesundheit. If you could say one thing to the people out there who are not yet properly engaged in digital, who are just sort of half-heartedly going through the motions, if you could say one thing to them, what would it be?
The glib answer is hire us to help you, but I don't know.
What do they need to know? What misconception might they have that you want to get rid of, or what have you?
Well, this is going to sound very glib too, is just do it. I mean, it's one of those things where you only learn if you're looking at the data and you're looking at the sort of the response you're getting back, you can adjust the way you're going about your efforts. I think you probably on the ad sales side, particularly larger companies, need to adjust how they would look at the advertising side. Because if you think about scale and what that means, 100 million views on YouTube a month would be a very large channel, right? But the reality is the media value of that is negligible, right? It's not, and it's not because the CPMs are low. Even at a $50 CPM, it's just not a huge proposition relative to broadcast. But sponsorship and leveraging the brand in all their desires, right? They desire engagement, they desire social, they desire all this stuff, is sort of how you'd have to shift how you go into it. So you got to change how you communicate with an audience. So it's not marketing top down, it's actually marketing bottom up in a dialogue. And then secondarily, the way you would monetize would probably change how you're going to market to sell your product. And I think those are the two big concepts that I think a lot of people are missing.
And I would just, for those digital, what would they call naysayers? Yeah, cave dwellers, who I would tell them that YouTube isn't kittens on keyboards anymore. That's still very popular on YouTube, but it's much more than that now. Look at Video Game High School that these guys have done, which is fabulous content quality. If you haven't seen it, look at episode 1 of season 2. See, I know your stuff. Yeah. And it's just extraordinary. I use it as an example to show our television producers of how good the content quality has become online. So that would be the thing I would tell them.
I think one of the most important points is to have a strong personality and just to get the support of your audience. The difference is that now it's what you have to get, the support of your audience. Your audience will bring you everything.
Thank you, guys. Audience, who's got questions? There's one right here in the front.
I can show. Oh, there you go. I had a question about YouTube and games, because I was looking at YouTube recently, and I think 7 of the top UK YouTube channels are basically young blokes playing games, and it's not reflected on TV at all. So I was wondering if that's a sign that TV needs to learn from YouTube that here's a genre that's really popular, or is it a sign that actually the right place for those things is on YouTube and they don't need to be on TV?
I don't know. We'd love to crack it. So you're absolutely right. Massive genre online in general is gaming, particularly in the multi-channel networks. Vast amount of play along, play through. The top YouTuber in the world, PewDiePie, is a gamer. Nobody's cracked very successfuly. Well, I should say nobody. These guys have done the best job. Nobody's cracked that pure gaming experience on television. But what CDS have done with Video Game High School is a incredibly smart and beautiful looking scripted way of bridging the gap between gaming and content. So. You're right, I think it's a huge untapped opportunity, and we have a few ideas in development on it, but it's tough. I think there will be ways to make that connection. It'll look a bit different on TV, but I think somebody's going to do a good job following in these guys' footsteps.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because what's interesting about it is it's just a new format of content, and we see, I don't know that broadcaster wants to watch just pure gameplay. I think in the States we had a channel called G4 which focused on that stuff, and for some reason it didn't connect. And what I think is unique about this is you have these personalities who are leveraging their comedic sense, and their community, and they're playing games. And I think that's where it's really connecting. It's really more of a personality-driven thing than a content-driven thing.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, we have one up here. Can we get a microphone? We have one here, and then the next one's over there, if anybody's watching. Yeah. Sorry, bear with us while we get the mic over there.
How much freedom you can get to the audience to create the content. It looks like we will watch the porn all the time from the first slide. So how much the audience can create? I mean,
in the porn industry,
yeah.
How much they can create? In fact, it's completely fake. There is no content created by the audience in the adult industry. So, of course, it's a dream, it's a fantasy. Everybody expects that, and us at Dorcel, we assume that as a professional company, we are not able to be involved in something which would be really amateur. So I think that as soon as a company well established try to be involved in an amateur stuff, it's already dead. The concept is dead. So, but sadly, I'm sorry for anybody, but it's just a fantasy. Doesn't exist in porn.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I have a question for Keith. If I got it right, you made reference to how smart Vice was in being not so dependent on YouTube, but by drawing traffic to their videos on their own website. My question is, how much of a problem do you think it is that we have a whole video revolution based on a platform that is a virtual monopoly like YouTube? Do you see that as a problem?
To be honest, I don't. Look, YouTube has become extremely powerful. There's no question. They do take a strong negotiating line. Us and other partners have to negotiate with YouTube, but we actually find them very accommodating, very helpful. We genuinely find that we resolve issues with YouTube. But they won't be the only player forever. There will be other digital platforms, I think, that emerge. But for those, to my comment about Vice and companies like Defy that have spent a lot of time building their off-YouTube strategy, they all still regard YouTube as being absolutely critical for discovery of their content. So I really do think it's quite a positive symbiotic relationship. And for now, and I don't see any sign of this changing, YouTube are very, very happy with that. They're quite happy for people to be building their own digital destinations on the back of a lot of discovery on YouTube for now. So I think they're smart people at Google, and I think they know that the larger the digital ecosystem becomes for content, that they will benefit.
All right, we have time for one more. Yep, right down here in front. Oh, going to the wrong one. Sorry.
Thanks a lot. Sorry, maybe two more. You mentioned the role of the multi-channel network and what they do for the content creators. Quite a few multi-channel networks all do that, or for them. How do you think they're going to differentiate themselves from one another going forward? What's going to be the specialism a multi-channel network will need to offer to compete against the others?
I mean, Reza can certainly speak to this, but I think they need to verticalize, and they are. So the large generalist multi-channel networks like Maker, like Fullscreen, like Broadband TV are all quite busy verticalizing their content, so categorizing the different genres of content that their YouTubers make. That then allows them to have a much clearer presentation to advertisers. So advertisers can buy against that particular vertical across their network. I think that's a key thing. I think the other key evolution will be content quality, which will continue to increase, which is why people like us are interested, because we think that's where we can step in. And then I think what follows is monetization levels increase. So hopefully that becomes a virtuous circle of then feeding back into better quality content.
The way I would answer that question is this: what differentiates CBS from NBC? Very little, right, in terms of back-end infrastructure, what they do, how they do it. What differentiates them is the content they have. And so I think that's really what is going to differentiate us from our competitors. Now, when we compete for talent and for, you know, content creators and stuff like that, I think the differentiations then become more, are you, like Keith said, is it a stronger community around sort of the genre you're specializing in? Are you interested, like for us, it's all about how do we develop a content creator's brand and how we go to market and sell that brand and how do we evolve that brand. And we've, you know, sort of made a name for us focusing on a very small tier of creator and focusing on building those brands as more consumer-driven brands as opposed to ours. And so everyone has their own, you know, sort of specialty in that. Some have technologies, some have, you know, scale that they sell against, and I think that's, we all go about that part fundamentally, you know, differently. But we'll ultimately, over time, end up looking very similar just to the outside world, just given sort of the functions that we do.
I am afraid that's all we have time for. However, the three speakers will be out in the Meet the Speakers area for the next half hour or so. It's directly outside these doors, so if you want to talk to them some more one-on-one, please go there. One more time, thanks everybody, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.